function in my VBA that converts between a written pattern to a chart, and I'm going to talk about how to use it and how it works. So first you need to enable developer, and then you would go to Visual Basic, Tools, References, and enable regular expressions, because that's what I use to find patterns here. And then you would go into this window anywhere, insert module, and then copy paste my code, which is this. And then you could also rename the module to something else, but this name has to be different to this name. And then because you can see there's a lot of inputs into this function, that I do something additionally to make it easier to use. Because otherwise, with user-defined functions in VBA, like if I were to just use it by itself, nothing shows up while you're typing, which is kind of annoying when there's like so many to remember. So what I do is go to Formulas, Name Manager, you press New, and then you copy paste it from my blog, but I name it to chart, and this is its value. Like it would look like that. And the function is inside it, so you can use it like with the to chart instead of convert written to chart. So like you would have to chart instead. Then this will show up. But when you're doing this, you have to be careful that you have every input. You can keep them blank. You'll technically only need to use the first two inputs for it to run. Like if you were to just use text and then key, it would have an error because you didn't put everything in. You would have to do the commas to fill everything, and then it'll run. So what the inputs are, let me just show you. To chart. Looks like that's because it's using a knitting font. You would have to download a knitting font. I use Stitch Mastery, which is free. That's then the first input is the text, so you would want to make it a reference that is the column is locked, and then you need a key column somewhere. This is necessary because it'll look for these abbreviations within the text. So that's this. But if it's on the wrong side, it should look on the wrong side, abbreviations. So you can do this with the if statement. If it's on the wrong side, use the wrong side column. Otherwise, use the right side column, the key. And then the next input, if you use it, is what will actually be output, what these will actually be output as. In this font, that's would be these. Like in this font, SSK is represented by a capital V. So then the next thing is right side. It's a Boolean, which means it's either true or false. There's no, like with this pattern, it has right side, wrong side already in it. You wouldn't have to do this. But this one, where it doesn't have it, you would want to input it too. So you would have this equals right side. And then count is an input specifically for cables. You don't need this. This one doesn't have cables, so you wouldn't need it. I'll show you later how it works. And then because this one has repeat from asterisk to the end without telling how many times it is, or well, this one does, but I added that there. It doesn't have the stitch count either. You would want to add the stitch count in. Otherwise, we would only do it one time. So, because it doesn't know how many times to do it. So then we do it. And this is, you can see it's 26 columns. That's correct. And drag it. It takes a couple seconds. And that's this. And else. So like if I were to remove it 2 times. and remove this. It just does it one time. Or if I could change this to 3 times, it'll make it 3 times. Or if I can also add in a stitch count number like in this form, 26 stitches, it'll be able to read this. But it does have to be this specific parentheses, number, space, stitches, abbreviation of stitches, and parentheses, or else it won't even know that that's what it means. Okay, let me demonstrate it with this one, because this one has decreases. You will to chart, so the text, key if, because this one has right side, wrong side. If it's all on the right side, you would just use the key, you wouldn't have to do this. So because this one has decreases and will move, you want to be sure that you do this so that it doesn't get messed up. Is this on the right side? Is this on the wrong side? I'll put these characters, and because it already says right side, it'll read the first 2 characters. So you can leave that blank. And this one doesn't have cables, so you can also leave that blank. And this one already has the stitches in it, so you can also leave that blank. And I'll do that. Oh, that's that because the font isn't correct. And then because you'll notice that like it starts wherever you put it. So in a pattern like this, you would have to move it yourself. So you would. I didn't want to make it too complicated and have it, because it does it row by row. It doesn't have knowledge of the rows below or above it. That's why you would have to do it like this. And then with cables are really annoying. Okay, so for example, in the cable font, I think most people would want to use is the dash cable EH, the ones with the EH in it. So that's this. That's an example. So when it's another font, so you can see what the text actually is, it's a greater than sign. But then when you switch it to cable font, it takes up 4 spaces. So for my function to know that it should occupy 4 spaces, you need to add in the column that has the number of spaces it occupies. Otherwise, there's no way for it to know. So here's how you would use it. Let me make this not font first. Because this one doesn't move, I can just do that. Add the key. And it's also on the right side, I think. So you don't have to have the statement there. And it'll know it's on the right side, and then it does need the stitch count. And it already knows the stitches numbers. It also doesn't need to know it. It'll just, do whatever stitches are there. If there's no, it'll only need to know the stitch count if there's a repeat, and then I'll need to know. If it doesn't specify how many repeats there are, it'll find it from the number of stitches. Otherwise, it doesn't really need to know. And then you can see that it leaves spaces for the character that will become cables. But what's really annoying is, let me make this into the Stitch Mastery font. So these stitches are a different font than the one that's for the cable. So that's why it looks like that. It's really annoying that the empty cells cover the cable cells. And I tried a lot of different things. I couldn't get it to not do that. I think the only way is to copy paste it as the values. And then you would want to merge these cells anyways, because I think it looks better when it's merged. It's more centered, slightly more centered. Then you would copy paste it into where it should be. So it's not like 100% automatic, but it gets pretty close. There are rules, obviously. The abbreviations in the key column have to match this abbreviations used exactly. The stitches have to be followed by either, they can't be stuck together like without a space. Like if it was like this, it wouldn't be able to tell that these are two different stitches. It would ignore this entirely. So there needs to be a space, obviously. And it can read when it's K4, and it can also read it if there's space in between it. But if there's two spaces, it can't read it. So, what else? It can read brackets and parentheses as groups, and it will assume that the number to the right of it, that's the closest to it, is the number of multiples of that. So, and it can also do groups within groups, repeats within repeats. It'll be able to tell. What else? It tells this pattern specifically if it has asterisk, if it has REP, so it could also be repeat, but it does have to start with REP, and then it also needs to end with asterisk. What else? I think that's it. I don't think this would work with color work patterns very well because they usually aren't written in the specific way where it's a color followed by the number of stitches of that color. But you could, type it in that way, like color A5, color A4, and then color B4, and then it would be able to do that into a chart. If there's something like this where it's just P, it will assume that that's repeated until it reaches the end of that many stitches. If there wasn't this, it would just have one P. And this, this doesn't divide evenly into this. There's 3. But it'll just assume it keeps going until the end. You can't have it as just Perl. It wouldn't be able to read that. You would have to change it into P. Also, numbers have to be in digits. They can't be like 1 or twice. It does have to be 1 or 2. I think you can Control F and replace that really easily. What else? I think that's it. As for how to use it, but now I'll explain how it works. Kind of, I don't, some of these things I can't really explain. Like, I don't really know a good way to explain regex, but I'll try. So, I have 2 dictionaries to store the conversion between key and stitch, and I have an intermediate way conversion. The intermediate conversion is to a character, so it's just a unique character of length 1. So and then I use exclamation points to represent spaces for the cables, if they exist. So this is when it finds if it's right side or wrong side from the leftmost 2 characters, and if there isn't the stitch column, it assumes the same as the key column. So then here is where it creates those dictionaries and stores exclamation points, like for the extra spaces. And this is the first regex. It finds where K's are stuck to P's. So sometimes it's like KP or PK together with no space in between. It finds those and makes them into, so it has a space between them so that they can find it as a word by itself later. Sorry. And then this finds groups that are within a parentheses or a bracket, and it has a number following it. And then it'll collect that number and replace that whole group with the repeat inside multiplied that many number of times. That's this repeat function. And it does that twice because first it will find the ones that are inside a parentheses first, because it excludes ones that have parentheses inside them. And then it prepares this regex. Well, I can show you how this one works first. So like you can see here, like if this inside was KP 3, 2 or something. Oh yeah, it doesn't have to have times or whatever. It only uses the number. Well, first it'll find the ones that are inside this parentheses first. It'll replace those with whatever. And then it'll find it again. Now it'll find the outside one, and then I'll repeat it again. And then I'll replace it again. And then this creates a string that will be a regex from the keys. So the keys are here. So it would make a regex that's based on if it's a K or P or SSK keys here, and these would have to be words. So this makes it so that it's within a word boundary. Like like there's K2 inside K2 together, but because I have these, it won't find K2 inside K2 together as a K2. It would find it as the whole word K2 together. So that's what that is. And it finds those stitches that have a number next to it, either right next to it with no space between or with one space between. And then it'll replace those with, it's an individual component, multiply it how many times. And then this finds a stitch count in that pattern with the stitches, if it exists, and it'll use it if it needs to be used. And then this is almost the same as this, but without the number. So this is how it will create an output string to be converted into the array. And then this one finds that asterisk repeat pattern. It's because the anatomy of that kind of sentence is really has many parts to it. It has a group that's in front of the asterisk, group inside the asterisk, between asterisk and repeat, and the group that's after it, and then if there's a number of stitches, or if there is no number, if there's 2 times, it'll find that number and it'll ignore this stitch. Like if they don't match, it won't tell you that. It'll just go with this one. And then using that other regex to find the stitches here, it'll add to an output string, replacing the stitches with the characters associated with from the dictionary. So it's this. You can see I defined what those groups are here, and that's what it does. So it will execute that regex that finds stitches, this one, within each individual groups. That's 1, 2, and 4. This is 0 index, that's why it starts at 0. But that's these groups, this one, and this one. Or, no, not this one, this one, this one, this one. And because the other stuff you don't need anymore. And then if it's on the right side, I'll reverse it because you read from the right to left on charts on the right side. And then it fills the array. And if it comes across exclamation point, it will make it into nothing. I don't know why it still covers text. If someone could help me with that would be great. But then it outputs the array. And that's it. It's probably not super robust. Like for color work charts, I wouldn't be able to do that. But I think it works for like most cases. Like I looked through a book that doesn't have charts and it's mostly in this format. So yeah. Hope this is helpful and it wasn't too confusing.